Hello, hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. I am back today with another video. And in today's video, I want to talk about what happens when you decide to speak up and use your voice. And as a result of that, you are met with criticism. And that's sometimes putting it nicely. And not only are you met with criticism, but then you are also met with a lack of empathy for experiencing that criticism because people view that as a byproduct of your deciding to speak up and use your voice in the first place. So we are also obviously in a time socioculturally where a lot of people's opinions are really heightened and clashing, to say the least. So when people do speak up and use their voices, there's always going to be those people in the other camps who are going to feel triggered or threatened by that and take it out on you. And that's kind of a reality that we live with right now, but I want to talk about managing some of those different stressors. This is something that happened to one of the course's students today, and she's using our community to sort of process through that. So actually, before I get into that subject a little further, I'll just let you know a little bit of that background. If you don't know me already, I am Arden Lee. I'm the creator of the Repatterning Project, which is an 8-week online course where we hack our beliefs and we dig deep into our patterns. We pop the hood and see everything that's going on for us in our minds, our internal algorithms that are getting us our external results in creating our own realities. And we change them. We empower ourselves to rewire them in order to get the results that we want. So go ahead and check out in the description box. There is a link to a free PDF guide about the Repatterning Project, and there is a link to the Repatterning Parlor, which is the group that I moderate on Facebook for people who are interested in learning more and more about this. And this is where this discussion started a little bit. So I'm really grateful to the person who spoke up and shared this story so that I can take this moment to address that reality of what happens when we finally start feeling comfortable using our voice, speaking out about what's right, and we are met with criticism or even with haters. Sometimes criticism is putting it really nicely. Sometimes there are just trolls on the internet, or there are people who maybe think that what they're doing is criticism, but they've been steeped in so much toxic conditioning that it's like it's not even a debate, And in this case, it seems like the person who shared her story was met with an attack over someone who's pretty famous for being a misogynist, and someone was a big fanboy of this person. And when she wrote about why this person's work is problem, I'll just say it. It's Jordan Peterson. So if you're a fan of Jordan Peterson, you probably don't belong here. There's a lot of other instructors that you're probably going to have to go through until you level up to actually be able to see the truth behind the fact that this man is using lobsters to talk about human primates. So Jordan Peterson, for those of you who haven't heard of him, is a speaker, and I guess you would call him a motivational speaker and a thought leader, for better or for worse. But he really cherry picks biology to be able to reinforce standards of misogyny in our society today. He tries to talk about alpha men and women who are submissive, and how men should go about selecting a mate, et cetera, but rather than actually looking toward biology as it operates and functions today, he basically cherry picks what he wants to, to support the point that he wants to make, rather than actually making a coherent argument that makes sense from all perspectives. Going and looking at the mating habits of lobsters when you're talking about humans, there are a lot of species who are way closer to humanity than crustaceans. So anyway, that's just one of many objections I have to his work. But in this case, all you really need to know is this person spoke up against his work and pointed out some of the misogyny that is inherent in it, and pointed out some of some of the flaws, some of the, there are plenty of people who are writing about the loopholes, the giant gaping loopholes in Jordan Peterson's arguments, that people who are his fans seem to just ignore or try to justify, because they just want to believe what they want to believe. And if you're invested in maintaining a misogynist heteropatriarchy, then that's what you're gonna do, rather than actually sink in and look at the truth of a situation. So she spoke up and pointed out some of the major loopholes in his arguments. And there was someone who was a fanboy who came on and essentially attacked her because he's still very steeped in that programming where he really just wants to believe what he wants to believe, and doesn't want to look at that, and just wants to continue buying into what Jordan Peterson has been selling him. And when she went to sort of complain about the fact that she had spoken up and had received this sort of this response that she really didn't want to deal with, then other people who were apparently friends of hers spoke up to sort of criticize her and say, well, essentially, their point basically was, if you didn't want to deal with getting this kind of a response, then you shouldn't have spoken up in the first place. And I'm sure they didn't phrase it quite that way, but it seems like that was really the thrust behind their argument. So let's take a look at this now, right? So the reality is, right now, we are living in a world where there are a lot of greatly divisive opinions. We are also living in a world that is very quickly evolving into something new, but as with any quick evolution, what that means is that it's shaky. The faster we go, the less sustainable it is, right? So we are moving towards sustainability, but as we are moving rapidly towards sustainability, because there are so many systems in our society that need to be turned around, even looking at climate change, over the next 100 years, looking at our environmental issues, looking at the sperm count decline. Did you guys read that article in GQ a couple months ago about how we're going to reach like sperm count zero? Basically, we're going to reach like zero fertility rates in another 100 years if we keep living as we have been living. It was a very interesting article, and apparently it has to do with the way that some of the phthalates, PHTHALATES, in our plastics are affecting our human bodies and their abilities to reproduce. Super scary, right? So we're at this point where we're evolving very quickly because we want to turn these systems around, misogyny being one of them, patriarchy, the imbalance of patriarchy being another one of them. All of these systems that are not set up toward sustainability, where we can actually support the human race in its survival and in its equity for everyone to be able to survive. Because if we're dividing humanity into who gets to survive and who doesn't, that's never a very good thing ecologically. That's not a sustainable system in itself. So as our evolution is speeding up, there is going to be a greater distance between people who are in favor of sustainability and equality and equity, and then there are going to be those people who are really deep rooted in the old ways, in the old paradigm, essentially. Those people who are going to follow people like Jordan Peterson because they give them some sort of a last gasp of hope that maybe the world as they know it isn't actually crumbling before their eyes, and maybe if they just study lobster sex, then they can go ahead and they can go ahead and get women, quote unquote. I use that phrase deliberately, that they can get women in the ways that they have been taught that they would be able to do so, and that they don't want to change, they don't want to evolve forward. They essentially just want more and more affirmation of the way that they've already been doing things. So when this happens, you're going to have people who have extremely divisive opinions. It's happened to me in particular when it comes to the incel community. Here are people who are really, really steeped in their super limiting beliefs. And, I've spoken out about that, and I've spoken about the ways out, and they don't even want a way out. They just want to be miserable. You can't even, it is what it is. You could throw them a life raft, and they would, if they could, they would grab onto it and pull down the person throwing it so that everybody drowned. That's just how, and at some point we have to accept that the world as we're living in it right now is, that there are people like that, that there are factions like that, that there are people who are steeped in the old ways, who don't want what's better for everyone, who want the system the way they are used to engaging in the system, that they want what has been comfortable for them, even if they were to evolve forward and things would be better for everybody, right? Because the more we can make sex safer for women, the more women are going to want to have sex, and the more sex everyone will be having. This is actually proven in, Christopher Ryan's and Casilda Jetha's book Sex at Dawn. One of the things that they say quite frequently is that there is actually a lot more sex and a lot more freedom in societies where women are given at least equal power. And once you empower women to feel safe, then those societies tend to be some of the most sexual that exists. So it's silly. Even when things are in their best interest, they still don't want to do it because they're afraid of change, right? I deal with people who are afraid of change all the time because I'm essentially a catalyst for change. That's the service that I offer. I help people to move forward. So I see this all the time. And essentially, what's going to happen is if you start to speak up and use your voice about anything, but especially about the evolving paradigms, then there are going to be people who are going to feel triggered by that and to attack you based on their perceptions of what you're saying. And unfortunately, I'm not saying that this is right. I'm not justifying it. I believe in speaking out against it, but what I will say is that right now it's just a reality that we deal with. And if I make a video on here about incels, I'm gonna have a shit ton of posts about me on the Reddit forums, that are talking about, I don't know, stupid shit about whether they'd fuck me or not. And I'm like, what are you even doing? What are you doing? Do something with your lives. I am, So I accept that reality, and I also look at the people who tell me, well, why don't you just turn off your YouTube comments? And I've been told that a number of times, and it makes my blood boil every time. Why don't you just turn off your comments? Or why don't you just do this, or just don't speak up if you don't, whatever. And the person in question who shared this story about speaking up against Jordan Peterson, told in her story, she said, that there were people she knew who said, well, why don't you just not speak up? Like, you're essentially asking for it if you talk about these things. And here's what you have to understand about people who have that kind of value set, right? The people who are like, well, just turn off the comments or just don't say anything. Here's the thing. Those people are never going to have an impact on the world, because when faced with the choice between speak up, use your voice, and let the chips fall where they may, even though you may receive criticism for it, versus keep your mouth shut and stay safe, they're picking keep your mouth shut and stay safe. And whatever they're doing with their lives, I guarantee you, they're certainly not creating their own platforms and their own courses or containers where they can help people to catalyze for change, where they can help people step into their next phase of evolution. They're certainly not creating anything noteworthy, because if they were, they would know that receiving criticism is simply a byproduct of receiving, of using your voice. It just is what happens. And even though they may sound like they're being realistic or whatever, and that's possible, but you have to understand that that people who understand that speaking up and using your voice means you are going to attract criticism from those who your view triggers. People who get that and who also understand the importance of speaking up anyway are going to empathize with you and say, yeah, you know what, that happens, but it sucks, and I feel you. And you know what, hey, you did the right thing. People who come at it and say, well, you just shouldn't speak up at all, or, well, clearly you were asking for it, are people who are not allowing themselves the same freedom of expression that you are, And so in these situations, you can almost have empathy for those people, because they're living under a set of values where they're basically saying, I'm just not going to speak up and I'm not going to express my truth, because if I did, then other people are going to speak out and criticize me, and that's not going to feel good, right? And ultimately, you don't want to be that person. I don't think you do anyway. You may want to pick and choose your battles, certainly. But ultimately, the question is, do you want to have an impact on the world? Do you want to be someone who is fully expressed and and when someone who's like, some silly Jordan Peterson fanboy talking about lobster sex, pipes up in your comments, are you going to let that, yes, absolutely, you deserve empathy and it sucks, and absolutely come and like vent to your friends and vent to your safe spaces about how much that sucks when that happens. But at the end of the day, it's important to realize for yourself that you are making a choice to use your gifts to change the world, and that others, whether they're the people who criticize you for speaking up at all, or the people who believe that speaking up just that it's your fault for speaking up in the first place, and that you would be better off if you just didn't speak up. They're not making the kind of impact that you want to make ultimately. So this is ultimately a choice. It is a reality, and it sucks. And I can certainly empathize with the fact that that receiving that kind of criticism is not fun. But ultimately, like, you want to start looking at all the positive change that you are curating in the world, and you want to look at the people who are responding to you positively. This person who shared the story also said that she received a couple of positive comments of support as well. And I think that's really important to focus on. When I'm in my negative, like, bad space, I can look at people who are commenting nice things on my post and just be like, oh yeah, okay, I changed your life, cool. And then one person will write that negative thing, right? We had that interview on this channel with Harris O'Malley, aka Dr. Nerdlove, talking about negative bias, right? We see that one negative thing and it throws us off. And I have to remember constantly to start actually noticing the people who are saying positive things, because ultimately those are the people that I'm here for. I'm here to inspire. I'm here to help people change. And if there's some incel or some Jordan Peterson fanboy who's going to come on to this, to this YouTube channel and leave me a bunch of hate, like that person wasn't going to work with me anyway. Why am I wasting my time? Why am I wasting my time talking to a wall when I could be engaging with people who need my work and who want my work, and who feel that my work is making a positive impact on them and is helping to change their lives for the better. So ultimately, yes, it sucks. It sucks that using our voices can draw attacks and criticisms that we don't necessarily deserve. And yes, it is par for the course. And yes, we also deserve empathy around the fact that that's not fair. And at the end of the day, we have to remember, or at least we owe it to ourselves to remember, that that we'd rather be us than either of those other people. We would rather be the person who is speaking up and making a change in the world than the person who is just criticizing and going around criticizing and attacking other people, or the person who believes that they shouldn't speak up at all because they will also be criticized and attacked. So at the end of the day, it's all about who do you want to be, and every person that you want to be, everything that you can think of is going to have its pros and cons. But at the end of the day, I would rather have a bunch of incels, making shitty posts about me on their stupid forums, than I would to live in fear, or to not make the impact on the world that I am so very excited to make. So if this resonates with you, definitely come check out that link to the repatterning parlor, and we can all empathize about the fact that being a leader is hard. Sometimes it's hard if we make it hard, right? But it's so much better. It's so much better and so much of a more fully grounded and expressive choice than just wasting all our lives never speaking up at all. So I feel pretty good about where I'm at with my choices, and I hope you do too. So come join us. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in the next video.